the Director for Global Outreach for the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Can you hear me in the back, Leland? Okay, great. And you know, with conferences, there's always changes. So John Henry Western, who is the director of LifeSite, or the editor-in-chief, founder of LifeSite News, is not here. He's listed in your program as the moderator. I will be moderating as well as presenting, so I'll be your host. Each of our 4 speakers, and we also have a change in the program as well. Frank Mylar was unable to get here, so Leland Anderson, who is assistant principal at the American Heritage School for the Distance Learning Program, is going to be presenting towards the end of our presentation about their online program, which is a very interesting program. I think you'll enjoy it. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers. I have to say that, and that includes me. So, I am a humble guy, but anyway. So the first one we're going to get started right off is Irina Shamolina, who is from Russia. She is an advisor to the Russian Orthodox Church on family and marriage and education. I've had the privilege of getting to know Irina for the last 4 years. I first met her in Berlin, Germany at the first Global Homeschooling Conference. She was a young mom, has 3 children, homeschooling mom. I don't know anyone else, few people in the world who are as passionate about the family and about home education than this woman. You are in for a treat. She has some really exciting and interesting things to share with us about home education in Russia. And I think these ideas apply everywhere. So I'm very excited. Would you please welcome Irina Shamolina from Russia.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to speak here today at the first homeschooling session within WCF event. I'm happy and sorry about this at the same time. I'm happy because it finally happened, and I'm sorry that it hadn't happened a long time ago, because I strongly believe that home-centered education is of paramount importance in passing our commitment to defend family and life to the next generation. So here today, I will speak about, I will give a quick overview of homeschooling in Russia. Then I will explain why Russian Church endorses homeschooling, and we'll say a couple of words about Russian experience with anti-Christian state education. And I will wrap up with a call for action. So homeschooling in Russia is just an emerging movement. The total number of homeschooling families is really tiny. It's about 0.2%. Very few people have ever heard about homeschooling, and those who have heard, they continue to send their kids to school, falsely considering state education as being as good as it used to be during Soviet Union times in terms of academic achievement. So why Russian Church endorses homeschooling? The reason number one is that Russian Church sees man as a family man and family as a home church. The definition of family in the Russian Orthodoxy is home church. For Russian Church, the natural family is a patriarchal family, where father acts as a priest, mother as a deacon, and children are the disciples of their parents. The primary role, the paramount role of family is education. Education of children, to educate its members to love, to sacrifice, to know God, to care about one another. And when children spend most of their day far from their parents, and the role of their tutor is taken by someone else, they cannot be really called the disciples of their parents. When mother is out of home, fully engaged with other social institutions, she possesses very small amount of time and energy to instruct her kids. So home church cannot function properly. When both parents and kids come home only to sleep and to charge their mobiles, then the natural patriarchal role of the father is kind of undermined and the home church cannot function. Homeschooling is a unique tool to bring mother and kids home and thus to restore the home church, right? Reason number 2, I believe everyone really agrees with that Christianity as well as family values cannot be taught through formal education because those two are life, not science. That's the reason why formal Christian schools often produce atheists. Eastern Church believes that education of children is the ultimate responsibility of their parents, which cannot and should not be delegated to any kind of institution. Only at home, children can learn family values and be raised as Christians. Reason number 3, homeschooling protects kids from anti-Christian curriculum as well as from anti-Christian peers and peer influence. The Eastern Church believes that until a certain age, children should better not be exposed to evil types of behavior and evil teachings. It is sad that, this, I'm sure, whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Deciding to send their kids to school, parents often do not realize their responsibility they take when choosing this form of education. Education should be an area which unites, not divides parents and their kids. Homeschooling gives parents real control over kids' lives and protects them from evil teaching and peers. When state becomes anti-Christian, it uses education as a major tool to find for kids' minds and hearts. And we in Russia had a large experience with that. After communist revolution, up to 2 million Christians been persecuted. It was the maximum number over the shortest period of time in the history of the world church. You can see here the Moscow Cathedral, main cathedral, which were turned down. And this on the central picture, the black one. You can see the size of the cathedral, the small one, the black one, and the huge white building that communists were going to build instead of it. You can see the size. So the corruption of education started with ban on all private forms of education and active promotion of public schooling. At this poster, this communist poster says that religion is poison, save the kids. You can see grandmother was going to bring her granddaughter to the church, but she desires to go to school. Where is the light? So exactly as it's happening now with the new gender and transhumanist ideology here in the West, a new religion, intolerant to Christianity was created in the post-truth schools in Russia. Here the first poster says, I'm an atheist and are you? And the second one, be ready to fight for Lenin and Stalin. Neo-pagan mausoleum ziggurat with Lenin mummy was erected on the Red Square. It has many, many satanic connotations. You can see in the center this prototype is pyramid in Mexico. And what we have now as a headquarters of European Union, is a Babylon Tower. You can see this is an official poster which says Europe, many tongue, one voice. You can see pentagram, reverse pentagram, which is a traditional satanic symbol, historical. Here on the poster, so it's not a conspiracy theory. Welcome to the European Union. Education worldwide obviously is becoming controlled by anti-Christian ideology. For those who, how many people do not know this guy with the beard here?
With Ban Ki-moon or the other one?
The other one. Does anyone know here who he is? No?
Yeah.
That's
I didn't know until she told me yesterday.
He is a kind of star in Europe. You better know. He calls himself Conchita Wurst. He was a winner of European song competition. It's kind of very important in Europe. He is now kind of new face of Austria. Bank of Austria has this on its bank card and in its advertising campaign.
Transgender.
So the evil is now taking control of all schooling around the world. As it was done in Russia, there is no doubt that all private schools very soon will be forced to adopt uniform curriculum. So homeschooling will become the only option for Christians to teach the Christian worldview. To guarantee, here is my call for action, to guarantee the parental right to teach their children all over the world, we have to use each platform which promotes family values. In the countries where homeschooling is just an emerging movement, the hunger for information on the issues is huge, and I believe that WCF is a very right place to become one of the global platforms promoting homeschooling. Thus we can save more families and more children for the Christ. Vivo Cristo Rey!
Bravo.
Thank you so much, Irina. Test 1, 2, check. Testing 1, 2. Okay, we have a technical issue. Oh, can you hear me back there? No? How about now? Okay. Thank you so much, Irina. That was a wonderful presentation. Okay, we're going to have technical issues here, I see. How's that? Is that better? Yeah. Likes to be stationary. Okay, great. We are going to have a time for question and answer after the presenters have had a chance to talk, so you will have an opportunity to ask questions. But I probably should have done this at the beginning, but we have a very full room here. How many of you are actually home educating right now, if you're willing to share that? Okay. How many of you are thinking about home educating? You're here to get some information about this. Are there some volunteers out there who could go, and could you go get one of the technical guys and have him come in here, please, and fix this issue? Thank you. I think it probably needs batteries or something, although the battery lights is green. So we're not going to start until we get this solved. We do have time. It's getting a little warm in here, so we may try to turn down the...
Does this one work?
That wasn't working either. So. Okay. So I'll start on the introduction with our next guest, who is Dr. Brian Ray. Dr. Ray, this is really annoying. Test 1, 2. Okay, hey, there we go. Thanks, Leland. Good job. All right. Yeah, you want to come up and start getting it ready? I've had the privilege of knowing Dr. Brian Ray for about 10 years. Many of you probably have known him for longer and have heard of his work. He's the founder of the National Home Education Research Institute, a leading institute focusing primarily and exclusively, I guess, on the research in the home education movement. Brian is a home educating father of 8. He is one of the early pioneers of home education in the United States. In some conferences, we talk about the 4 pillars of home education. Brian's one of the 4 pillars who led the way. In the early days, people wondered, is it legal? That was the first question people would ask. Is it legal? And it was not in the United States legal for a number of years. The next question people would ask is, well, can it work? Well, Brian has been a pioneer in delivering research and information to help the home education community to defend what we all know is true, that, as Irina said, that education is a natural role of the family, and of course it would work. So will you please welcome Dr. Brian Ray.
I'll put it right in there. Okay, so let's get going. I'm glad most of you speak English, otherwise I'd get in trouble with the organizers. So I am supposed to be a researcher. That's what I do. But I'm going to start with something else today, all right? A little story. I'm going to give you a story. I'm going to talk about a problem I think there is, and then I'm going to propose a solution to you. And I'll stick the research in there just because I have to as a researcher. All right, so I grew up in Western Oregon. Have any of you gone to swim in the Pacific Ocean in Oregon? It's cold, it's beautiful, it's cold, and it's dangerous. You know, have you ever heard of a rip current? That's this thing that's going out to the ocean, will draw you out and kill you. And you know, in addition to the rip current, we have little sneaker waves that will come up and smash you and then pull you out to sea. And we have unseen logs that will crush your legs or break your neck. And we have hypothermia that starts in about 29 minutes. And I've experienced that, by the way, in the Pacific Ocean in Oregon. It's not fun. So let's say I have a little girl. She's 8 years old. And I say, oh, you know, she's not much of a swimmer yet. And I'm going to say, Susie, you go play in the ocean for a while. I'm going to take a 15-minute nap, and then I'll sit up and check on you and see how you're doing. And you say, you're an ignorant, irresponsible, selfish, irrational, or lunatic father. I think you'd probably say something like that. Okay, now I'll try to be a little more academic. It was the spring of 2015, it's April. I went to the American Education Research Association conference, giant meeting, 15,000 researchers from all over the world. It's the big education research conference. And I always go to at least one session to find out, what are they talking about, you know, over there in the alternative ways. And remember, these are the people who do the research, who teach the teachers, who teach in the schools. It's probably the same in your country if you're not from the United States. So I went to this talk, and you know, there's a lot I want to read to you here, but I don't get to do it. All right. So here's the researcher, and in the program, the name is something like Jenna. I go to the round table, about 30 people there, but the name tag, I'm a little confused, is Jake. Took me a few seconds to figure it out. This was a transgender, and I, you know, right now I don't care about that. I don't really care about that, but here's the deal. Jenna / Jake was very excited about her research. Here's the research. In the public schools, I'm just doing the emphasis part here. The study is about transforming the social in order to achieve increased support for those who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual. Okay, but now watch this. I want you to look at the boldface. But it is equally about dismantling misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia so that all people, regardless of their sexual or gender identity, can be free. Now you might say, so what, Brian? Now get this. She is in with 4th and 5th graders, 10 and 11-year-old in the public government schools of America, trying to re-educate, re-indoctrinate with the permission of the public school system. Can you kind of get that? Just get that. Now we're way out there, way out there now. And there's a whole lot more. I won't read it to you. Okay, so what am I getting at? If you haven't got it yet, schooling and education is all about the formation of men's and women's beliefs and attitudes. And you know what I have to say? Irina and I never talked before this. We have almost the same talk. It's incredible, just in a little different way. What is teaching, training, indoctrination? People don't like it when I use the word indoctrination, especially scholars, academics. But then I just say, hey, how about if you stop for a minute and consider that the indoctrination is just putting ideas, values, beliefs into children. And well, yeah, we do that. You know who admits that? The philosophers of education and the historians of education. The run-of-the-mill teachers, the school administrators, they don't want to use the word indoctrination. But the philosophers of education will use the word indoctrination. And this has been known for millennia. I'm going to be a little U.S.-centric here because I am an American. I'm just going to have to deal with that. But I want to say that I've been at 4 of these World Congress of Families, and I presented all 4, by the way, Irina. And I started to wonder, something I think is missing. We in the community promote the supernaturally created natural family. But some quick history shows that many understand the power of schooling and education has been going on for a long time before the World Congress of Families. 1952, Bertrand Russell, a Fabian socialist, said, and I'm going to just do the bold part here, he was talking about mass psychology. He says, when the technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for that's called 1, generation, will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen. 1965, Jacques Ellul, a French philosopher, law professor, sociologist, lay theologian, and Christian. Again, you got to read this book. It's called Propaganda, the Formation of Men's Attitudes. He says the family is a tremendous obstacle to such propaganda. Now go down the next boldface. You read the book Propaganda, you think it's going to be about Soviet Union, China. Guess what? It's about every nation, including the United States. He says, quote, "The American school is becoming more and more a simple mechanism to adapt youngsters to American society via propaganda." And he says, "The most obvious result of primary, that is public education in the 19th and 20th centuries, was to make the individual susceptible to super propaganda," end quote. That's 1965. 1963, theologian Rushdoony tells us the state priesthood of educators are best able to rear the child and prepare him for life viewed as status life. That's the view of public educators, by the way. 1974, nobody knows her, but I'll tell you. She says, "So what are government schools? They are administrative government agencies that exist to promote change. What kinds of change? Social change, political change, economic change, cultural change, religious change, change in our form of government, total change," unquote. 1995, Warren Nord, a professor, secular university, University of North Carolina. And people in America don't want to admit this. He studied the curriculum in public schools. What did he conclude? There is, in the original, something like a coherent worldview, a loosely structured set of philosophical commitments which underlie and give shape to the texts of public schools, on and on and on. Look at the boldface. "Indeed, I will argue that at least in its textbooks and formal curriculum, students are," underlined, I didn't put the underline there, "indoctrinated into the modern secular worldview and against religion." Professor, University of North Carolina, still doing research. Now, this is supposed to be inflammatory. I don't think it's inflammatory. I don't mean it to be inflammatory. Some of you know who banned home-based education in Germany. It was Hitler. Why would he do that? Just what Irina said, told you. They know. You don't want the family to be interfering with what certain people want. Now I'll go to two more scholars, Dr. James Carper and Thomas Hunt, 2007, both academic scholars in the United States. Quote, "In sum, then, we contend that the public school is a functional equivalent of an established church, buttressed with religious language, expected to embrace all people, legitimating and transmitting an orthodox worldview, and underwritten by compulsory taxation," unquote. All these citations you can get from me if you want. I'm trying to go faster. What's my point? What's my point? Children in state public schools are being taught, trained, and indoctrinated 5 days per week, 9 months per year, for 12 years or more. The ideas, values, and beliefs that are contrary, they're antithetical to what y'all are trying to do here at the World Congress of Families. They're antithetical. And they have been for well over 50 years. I'm going to say more like 120 years in America. And they are antithetical, if you care, if you're a Christian, the one and only true God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They're antithetical to those concepts, which is more important to me than the other stuff, but that's me. Here's a long list of examples I just made up on my own yesterday of specific things taught in government schools that are antithetical to what most of you probably believe and what Christians believe, but I don't have time for it. Just out of time. Okay, so.
You've got another 10 minutes or so.
Oh, Mike.
Go back.
Go ahead and go back to that, Brian.
I go back, I can do it.
And you know, the democracy speaks.
It's just kind of how I work, I was like, I'll try to cram in 80 slides in 20 minutes.
Okay, well,
Now here's some examples if you want to take a snapshot of it. And I know this, by the way, I've been a teacher in public schools, I've been a teacher in private schools, and I'm a former professor of education and science. So it's not like I'm just coming into this from some biased, wacko, fringe, homeschool dad perspective, all right? I know I am, but it's okay, it's okay, you know. 1 son, 7 daughters, and a wife. I'm still trying to understand women. One of them's here, Marta's here, my baby's here, you know, my little girl's here, Marta. So these are some specifics. I mean, you could go right down the list, you know, whether it's...
Pick a few.
Pick a few. I got to put on my glasses.
Could you just read the left side?
Origin of life is one subject. In the state government schools, I and all humans are a product of time, chance, mutation, and natural processes, and the unknown. A homeschooling parent directed by Christians, for example, God purposely created humans and all life kinds exactly as he planned, and no chance was involved. Down the next subject, the highest being in government schools. I've been recently in public schools in America. I am the center of the universe. My truth, needs, desires, and wishes are paramount. Success is my self-actualization as defined by experts and myself. The homeschool Christian, on the other hand, says the only one and true God, Father, Son, Spirit, is to be glorified in all things. I am successful only if he saves me and I do the good works he planned for me. Gender. There's no such thing as binary gender. Did you know that? That's what Jake Jenna was teaching the kids. She was teaching them to question that. I mean, you think that's way out there? That's not way out there anymore in public schools. The next column says, God created them, what? Male and female. Sound sexual behavior. The public education, knowledge about sex ensures safe and appropriate behavior. They can't even define that, by the way. We would teach knowing and believing right ideas about sexual behavior leads to a right heart and behavior. You've heard of these books, Heather Has Two Mommies and King. And you might think, some right-wing Christian organization wrote about that. It's true. That's being read to children in kindergarten in the United States. You can hardly believe it. I have stories. I've met moms and dads at homeschool conferences. So the list goes on and on and on. If you want to take a snapshot, go ahead. And I'll send all this to you if you want it. If you ever email me, bray@nhera.org. B-Ray, B-R-A-Y at nheri.org. I'll give you that to you at the end. It's just, I just made this up on the fly. This stuff, I'm not making this up. I mean, I made it up on the fly, but I didn't make it up. I just created it on the fly. But it's real. Okay, so reflect back on the dad who says, okay, Susie, you go play in the ocean, Pacific Ocean for 15 minutes. I'll wake up from my nap and see how you're doing. That's kooky. So I want to ask you, is it knowledgeable, responsible, generous, rational, and sane of any father or mother here to willfully subject his or her child to state formation when there are other options available? I'm not going to get into right now, you're going to be shot if you don't put your child in school. I'm not going to get into that exception right now. Okay, just generally volitional options. Is it knowledgeable, responsible, generous, rational, and sane of us at this conference in the natural family movement to not carefully educate parents about the rip current of state government formation of boys and girls' values and attitudes? So what are the philosophically sound and practically available educational options? Again, I am a little US-centric, and I know there are challenges in other places, but I know there are also options in other nations. Parent-controlled private schooling and parent-directed home-based education. Okay, so I'm the researcher. I got to give you the research. Somebody might wonder, well, what about test scores? My first answer is, it's not the most important. But you know what the answer is? Most of you know what the answer is. Study after study after study after study after study, and state-provided data say that homeschool children, on average, are 15 to 30 percentile points above the public school average. I mean, like, it's just obvious. It's obvious. Study after study after study. 15 to 30 percentile points higher. Well, what about family income? What about those poor families? Nationwide study, no difference between the wealthy families and the poorer families and the children's academic achievement. In homeschooling, in public schooling, you find a correlation, right? Well, what about money? We've got to have a lot of money, right? We have to have $11,000 per child in public schools in America. Homeschoolers spend, on average, less than 10% of that. Way less than 10%, by the way. Way less than 10%. And yet their scores are higher. What about teacher certification? Sorry if I offend you. How many of you are certified teachers? Go ahead. Let's admit it. In the homeschool world, whether parents have ever been certified or not, no significant difference in their children's learning. No difference. What about government control? We know if just the government could control us more, Josiah, our children would learn more, right? We divided up all 50 states by high government control, medium government control, low government control, and what did we find? No difference in test scores. Zero. Zero. What about minorities? You know those poor black people. They're always at the bottom of the totem pole in public schools in America, and they are, by the way. It was really exciting. I got to do a study on black families this last year. I'm not a black studies expert. Nothing. I know nothing about that. Are you going to be surprised what we found? No, you're not going to be surprised. Controlling for gender and socioeconomic factors, the black homeschool students outperformed black public school students in reading by 42 percentile points, language 26, and math 20 percentile points higher. It's just so obvious. But what about socialization? I know you grandparents are worried about that. What about socialization? So all the homeschoolers know they have all kinds of social opportunities, but what does the research say? It's a broken record. In study after study after study after study, homeschool children are doing as well, and often better, even using secular measures of social development. In fact, I would say, and I've said this in court, when people ask that question, well, what about socialization? You might just say, are you happy with the rates of incarceration in America? Are you happy with the rates of drug abuse and alcoholism and out-of-wedlock births and on and on and on and on, with 87% of Americans in public schools? Are you happy with all that? So why do we even need to do research on homeschooling? But research says they're doing well. And then what about 5 more minutes? 3 minutes. Okay, he's giving me the okay, all right. So several studies on socialization, and then what about as adults? All right, but what about the real world? The real world of adulthood. Studies, you can say, Brian Ray, we know, stop, broken record. And this, by the way, this is research done by many researchers now. I've done more than anybody, but the researchers are all over the world. They're all over the world. And they're finding the same thing. On average, more politically active. Actually, I think this is why a lot of people don't like homeschooling. They're more, the graduates are more politically active. Civic involvement, writing letters to the editor, voting, whatever. And get this one, brand new study a year ago. For years, the negative critics said, homeschool kids are going to grow up to be racist, bigoted, narrow-minded. This Albert Chang has nothing to do with the homeschool movement. Brand new study, one of the best studies ever done. What did he find? Homeschool graduates are more politically tolerant than public school and private school students. It's just the opposite of what? Pardon? Albert. And they're doing as well or better in college. But here, I think, is the key, really, to people at the World Congress of Families. All right, so academic achievement, that's nice. Voting, that's nice. That's pretty nice. I guess that's important to World Congress of Families people. But what about children growing up to hold the values that maybe people at this conference would believe in and want to transmit to their children? Some of you know the researcher George Barna in the United States. And about, 5 years ago he said, roughly of children raised in evangelical Christian families, something like 85% just basically walk away from Christianity in their 20s. It's like, boom, whoa, that was a shocker. That's something's a little crazy. In 2004, I got to do the first big study of adults who were home educated, and we found roughly 94%, it might not have been a perfectly representative sample, but over 90% stayed very close to their family's values and beliefs. And then just this year, I got to do another one, which was really fun and really exciting. And I'm going to show you this real fast. This is just one graph out of preliminary findings, but what in the world does this thing say? Okay, down the left column is inputs growing up. And then across the top would be basic Christian beliefs, what do they hold today, and basic Christian behaviors. In a nutshell, there's so much good stuff to talk about here, but relationship with mom and dad was a biggie. How was your relationship with your mom and dad when you were 16 to 17 years of age? This is a study of adults growing up. It's not a study, a homeschool study. It's a study of adults who are church growing up and they're now 18 to 38. Simple question, what was your relationship with your mom and with your dad growing up? And that was like the strongest, biggest, most important thing in all of this for these adults. But here's the one that is bothering some people. The more years, okay, so this is a kind of a Christian-focused study, all right? The more years in Christian school, the more negative correlations as adults. And the more years in government public schools, clearly more negative correlations with good things as an adult. And I am telling you, I did not know what we were going to find. But on basically everything, the more years in home education, all positive correlations as an adult. So, well, you're a biased researcher. I just got the data, okay? And we paid for a random sample also, and it basically came up with the same thing. it's very, it doesn't say, if you go to McDonald's, you will be a hamburger, okay? But it does say, there is something about home-based education. It provides an environment that does and is conducive to passing on the values. What's the other option? Parent-controlled, private education, and I'm not going to talk about that, it's not my specialty, but I just want to say I am open, and I do believe parent-controlled private schooling is much better in forming children's attitudes, if you want the goals that I think you want in adulthood. Small, large, tiny, tutoring, distance learning, Christian denominational, other philosophies and religions, expensive or inexpensive, you got the whole ball of wax available. So in conclusion, back to the rip current. And sometimes somebody like me can just sound negative, so I'll try not to sound negative. But here's the deal. What some people say, what's the definition of insanity? You keep doing the same thing expecting a change. But here's the deal. If you're going to have most of the children of y'all here, or people who believe in what you believe, indoctrinated, their ideas, their minds formed for 13 years in a system that is antithetical to what you believe, what do you expect when they get older and become legislators and voters? You should expect what you've got right now in America and other nations. But if you want something different, then you need to do something different. And that is, you need to put children under adult orientation, parent-controlled education, for the fundamental and long-term advancement of what you believe in. And that's only going to happen if you do not put them in government schools and you put them under the authority of their parents and people who believe what their parents believe in private education that is not controlled by the government. Thank you.
You're going to give us your contact information.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's right there. It's right here somewhere.
It's B-Ray, B-R-A-Y,
At that thing there.
at nheri.org. B-Ray, B-R-A-Y, at nheri.org. And you can go to that website. Brian is a listener-supported organization. So if you believe in research, you can support the National Home Education Research Institute. Yeah, sure. This is a Dell, by the way. You can see the little spinning circle there. It could be Microsoft's problem, but I'm just saying it's a Dell computer that I'm using.
You won't even get to see it.
Oh, you're not even seeing it. It's what's happening is my PowerPoint just crashed, is what happened. So, in case you're wondering the brand of the computer that I have, it's a Dell. In fact, I had Dells at home. I'll never buy another Dell. Michael wants me to endorse him. He's going to have to do more. All right. See, is this working now?
Do you want me to try while you're working?
It's not. Okay, I'm going to have to restart. No, I'm going to have to restart. No, I'm going to have to crash this, turn it off.
Or, you don't plug mine in?
No. Okay, no, hang on a second. Just take a second, please, bear with me.
If you want it, this has PowerPoint.
I was telling him, this happened to me once before. I'm delighted that it worked for my colleagues here. But, okay, let's see. Okay. There we go. All right. Homeschool Legal Defense Association is a global advocacy organization. I'm the director for global outreach. In addition to serving our members, we have 80,000 member families. Some of you, any HSLDA members in the room? Thank you very much for your support. We couldn't do what we do without your support. We are a membership organization. We serve individual families who have issues with their local school districts. I used to be the HSLDA attorney for Utah. And anybody from Granite School District here? Even granite account, okay. We used to have lots of issues with granite, and we've had issues with others, but over the years, the Utah homeschool law has really improved, thanks to your very friendly legislators. But I serve our members in a number of states, and homeschooling has been legal in the United States for, 20 years now in all 50 states, but it wasn't always that way. I'm going to talk with you about a couple of things here, and first I'll just introduce you to my family. That's my family. I have 7 children, ages 4 to 18. My 18-year-old has just entered college. He's on a cello scholarship at a school of music in Nashville. And I'm very grateful for my wife's support over the years. We've been homeschooling for 15 years, all the way through. If you'd like to be my friend on Facebook, I'm always looking for more friends. I need more friends. So facebook.com, MP Donnelly 2, that's where you'll find me. If you'd like to email me, you can email me at global@hslva.org. I believe that homeschooling is the most effective way for parents to fulfill their role as stewards of their children, to help them understand who they are, and to be able to know, love, and serve God. So I just want you to know where I'm coming from. I'm an advocate, I'm a practitioner. I'm not an objective researcher. I'm going to talk very briefly about some of these ideas, and Brian touched on a number, so I'm not going to repeat what he said. But I believe that homeschooling is uniquely effective because it gives parents time to develop the relationships that lead to discipleship, so you can know your child. It allows you to be flexible with your child's education, so you can customize and personalize a program of education based on your child's and each child's unique design. I'm talking to you folks who are thinking about homeschooling. You folks who have been homeschooling know what I'm talking about. Of course, homeschooling moms never think that, you never get frustrated, right? Never get tired of homeschooling. Never think, can I do this, right? Never think about giving up. Okay? It's okay to think about these things, just don't do it, okay? Keep on keeping on. But you may be wondering, gee, should I keep on going? Well, I just want to encourage you. Homeschooling allows us to challenge our students and provide them an emotionally, academically, and spiritually safe environment. And for me, the biggest reason I think home education is so great is it allows us to glorify God, our Creator, to acknowledge Him in what we're doing. People homeschool for a lot of reasons. The U.S. Department of Education has done some research on this. Concern about the environment is the #1 reason people give for home educating in the United States.
That's the trees and the pollution.
Concern about the environment, whatever that means to that person. And again, not trees and pollution, the moral environment. I think because when you look at the number two, it's people want to provide moral instruction. You can't do that in American public schools. Okay, so those are the reasons that people homeschool right there. When asked what the #1 reason is, again, concern about the environment. That question masks, I think, what other reasons, which are they want to provide moral instruction. The reason they're concerned about the environment is because the moral environment in schools is bad. That's what they're concerned about. Some people are willing to explicitly say, yeah, I want to teach my children my faith or more my values or ethics. Some people aren't willing to say that. They're not willing to tell the government that on paper because they're nervous. But concern about the environment is kind of neutral, but I think that's what it means. Okay, and that's the #1 reason. But when you put #2 in moral and religious instruction together, that's #2. Brian talked about academic achievement. I'm not going to talk about that. Oh, you homeschool, what about socialization? I mean, we can talk about that. That's fun to talk about. I'm not going to talk too much about it except to show you this fun little cartoon here. Anybody seen this cartoon? So the myth of homeschooling is that you're just isolated in a fishbowl, right? Those of you thinking about homeschooling, that is not homeschooling. The reality is you are swimming in the sea. The school is a artificial environment. It's an artificial environment. Homeschooling is a natural environment. The family is a natural environment, and you can take your children and you can go around and swim in the sea. Okay? The desire for public education is that everybody swims together and stands in line. Okay, that's what we learn in school. We learn to stand in line. The biggest difference between homeschoolers and public schoolers is homeschool kids don't know how to stand in line. I mean, it's so amazing. You know, you go to a homeschool co-op, you know, and they learn it at the co-ops because, you know, you got large kids, you got to do some crowd control. But you bring a homeschool kid to a field trip, and you know, they're wandering around the museum, and the curator's saying, "Come on over here, kids, let's line up." And the homeschool kids walking around. It's like, line up, what's that? You know. But the result of that methodology, that institutional factory model of education, is everybody's a sardine in a can. We're all the same. We're not different. That's what they want. That's the philosophy that Brian was talking about. It's true. You can go back and research it. I've researched it. He's researched it. Lots of us have researched it. That is what public education started. The people who started it, that was their philosophy. Okay. You can make up all kinds of reasons why public education is helpful or what have you, but when you look at those who started it, that was one of the desires they had. And the studies, as Brian said, show that homeschool kids are not strange. They're actually quite normal. I mean, there are exceptions, but there are exceptions in every community, you know? Parents' education, talked about that. Okay, so I'm the global outreach advocate. I want to talk with you about what's going on in the world. Okay, I want to give you a little insight to what's going on in the world. So home education is a growing global movement, and it's very exciting. I get to travel around the world. I've been in over a dozen countries, talking to homeschoolers and advocating for homeschoolers in legislatures and defending homeschoolers in courts and international tribunals. And I'll just tell you, you know, you can go to a room in Germany, if you could get this many homeschoolers in Germany together because they're afraid of the government. They do get together, but they don't tell them where they're going to do it. Or Romania or Bulgaria or Kenya or the Philippines. And, you know, the reality is socialization is a question. And they laugh just like you do. They laugh just like you do. And, you know, is it legal? You know, that they have the same concerns, the same issues. And why would we be surprised by that? We're made by the same person. We're not that different. And homeschoolers in other countries aren't that different, but they are struggling a little bit. You know, when you look at, who's from another country, by the way? Who's from another country? Okay, a few of you. All right, most of us are local. Okay, so, you know, U.S., this is kind of the regulatory framework. Red just means the government's a pain in the neck to deal with. Okay, green means you don't have to deal with the public government at all if you're homeschooling. And yellow is kind of like, it's okay, it's not a big deal. I mean, here in Utah, you send in a paper once and you're done, pretty much. And that's great. That's what we want to get for every state in the country. Okay, media, you cannot quote me on that. Okay, if there's any media here, you are not allowed to quote me on that. Okay, all right. But now, the next slide shows what's happening in Europe. And of course, what happens in Europe stays in Europe, right? It never finds its way to the United States, right? Like, you know, homosexual marriage didn't start in Europe, right? We're in the Nordic utopias where everything is just fine. And anyway, when you look here, you know, but the reality is on home education, somehow, it's pretty much allowed in most places, although it's quite more heavily regulated in most places. Green doesn't mean nothing. Green means it's allowed, okay, just allowed. Red means not allowed, and homeschoolers are kind of persecuted. The light red there is Sweden. Sweden, Sweden, the law says you can homeschool, but no one's allowed to homeschool. Germany, at least they say, you're not allowed to homeschool, and we're not going to let you homeschool. At least they're consistent. The Swedes, I don't know, I don't get it. Anyway, the blue is I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Iceland. I don't quite know what's going on in Belarus.
Is Norway right in there with?
Norway is green. It's okay. You can homeschool in Norway, although a lot of Norwegians don't do it. Most don't do it. They think a lot of them think it's a little strange. Anyway, okay. So when I've done some research on this, wrote a chapter in a book. When I looked at about 123 jurisdictions, including 50 states in America, 16 states in Germany. So you gotta, so 50 plus what is 50, 16, whatever it is, 66. So 66 of the 101. I wasn't homeschooled. Come from, I went to the public school, come from the US or Germany, okay? But I looked at 160 some odd jurisdictions. 101 allow homeschooling, whereas 22 do not. So, the trend in the world is to allow home education. So the question, at least in those jurisdictions, isn't whether it's allowed, it's, what kind of control does the government have, okay? But there's a lot of countries that I haven't researched, and the reality is in the Middle East, homeschooling is a very foreign concept. In Africa, there's some places where it's growing. You know, Asia, it is beginning to grow faster. South America, it's growing faster. So it's exciting to see what's happening around the world. Home education is a controversial global movement. I want to talk about that a little bit. Brian hinted on some of this. I think, this is my personal view, education is a primary, fundamental, and natural family function. I think that just is obvious. And that's part of the reason why it's controversial, because there are those who don't believe that. John Locke said that nature grants instruction solely to parental power, not to civil government. He wrote this in his second treatise on government back in the 1600s. Okay? His contemporary, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, wrote this: families dissolve, but the state remains. Okay, we're talking about worldviews here. Okay, there are two different ways to look at education. The United States Supreme Court says that parents have a fundamental right to direct the education of their children. You can't force parents to send their children in public schools only. Okay? The German Federal Criminal Court said that homeschooling is an abuse of parental rights and constitutes child endangerment. And not only did they say that, they also said that, and it is appropriate and necessary to use force on families who homeschool, if needed, to compel them to send their children to school. Why is that? Well, it's because some people recognize the truth. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It's not neutral.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have, because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
I can tell some of you have not seen that before. Yeah, Melissa Harris Perry, MSNBC host. Okay, professor at Tulane University. She's not alone. There are lots of professors like that. She's just honest. I thank her for being honest, because I can show this clip to you so you can understand what we're dealing with here. Okay, this is a battle for the hearts and minds and souls of children. Not just our children, children everywhere, all around the world. The United Nations has education first. You saw Ban Ki-moon in that last slide. He was with Conchita. They were on the stage together, okay? Education is a key component, a key element of what the United Nations is trying to do. They're doing a lot of things. Education is a key one. One teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. Okay? Ban Ki-moon was quoting that young girl who got shot in the head in Pakistan because she wanted to go to school. Okay, she said that. He quoted her. Then he said, "These are our most powerful weapons. Every child deserves to learn the values that will help them to grow up to be global citizens." Okay, that's what the UN wants to create: global citizens. The UNESCO organization has created a manual on global citizenship education. What is the purpose? To build values, skills, and attitudes among learners that can facilitate international cooperation and promote social transformation. Okay? You know, let's transform America. Right? Who wants to transform America? Our president said that. Okay? It's an international, it's a global agenda by numerous groups, and education is clearly one of the main ways that they plan to do this. It's, you know, it's not, they're not hiding it. That's what they're saying. Okay? So there's a battle going on. It's a battle of worldviews. What can we do about it? Well, I mean, you're here. Thank you for being here. You're looking at, you're here because you're interested in home education. You're thinking about doing it or are doing it. And so you are responding to this. Okay? And so I think you should keep doing that. If you're thinking about home educating, do that. I've talked with a lot of folks here who've said, you know, my school is okay, and my teachers are good, and I live in an LDS community, and I know all the teachers, and they're fine, and it's not that hostile. I'm like, okay, that's fine, great. But, you know, we've talked here a lot about other things. And, you know, sometimes the good can be the enemy of the great. Sometimes the good can be the enemy of the great. What's getting in the way of you doing something great for your I think homeschooling is a really great thing to do. Now, is it demanding? Yes. Is it demanding? Yes. Does it require mom to make some sacrifices? You bet. But what's motherhood about anyway? Okay, the men and women are complementary. We have different roles, and boy, am I glad I'm not a mom. And my kids are too. I can tell you that. If you would like to get some more information, I'll tell you, the reality is, internationally, there is a lot of support for the idea, at least in international human rights law, older international human rights law, that parents have the fundamental right to direct their children's education. And if you're interested in learning about that, there are treaties, there are UN declarations and things of that nature. You can go to this website, the berlindeclaration.org, berlindeclaration.org, and there is a document there that lists most of the international treaties that talk about the rights of parents. And they're in there. Okay, Article 26.3 of the UN Declaration on Human Rights, I think you may have heard that in one of the plenary sessions. Parents have the prior right to choose what kind of education their child shall have. We believe that includes home education. That's the theme of the Global Home Education Conference that I'm helping organize, which is going to be in Rio de Janeiro in 2016, in March. Anybody want to go to Rio? Yeah. All right, well, you can come. You're invited. GHEC2016.org. We'd love to have American homeschoolers come and connect with and share and make friends from around the world and be ambassadors for homeschooling. Homeschooling is a growing global movement. We here in America have been doing it for 40 years. We have a lot to share with our friends around the world. It's one of the good exports of America. Okay? Right now our government is exporting a lot of bad things, but this is a good one. We can go out there and we can share a lot. So mark your calendar. Think about coming. You can support the conference with your prayers, financial support, encouragement. GHEC2016.org is the website. We plan to bring together a lot of people to help make some changes positively in the world for home education. So I want to thank you for your time. There's my contact information there. You can certainly communicate with me at any time. I'm very happy to hear from you. All right, great. So our next speaker, to bring us up to the end there, and unfortunately Brian and I have consumed more time than we're supposed to, so we may or may not have time for questions, but we'll see. So I'd like to introduce Leland Anderson to bring a practical perspective. I'm excited about this presentation. Leland, as I said, the assistant principal at the American Heritage School, has an online program that a lot of homeschoolers are using here in Utah and actually around the world. Leland is a father of 6, right? And I will let you tell him a little bit more about yourself, Leland, as we get set up here. But please welcome Mr. Leland Anderson.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay back there, everyone? Okay, great. Well, I'm really pleased to be with you today. My name is Leland Anderson, and I am the proud husband of Gina. That's my first and most important role, of course, and I know you recognize that with your families as well. These are just a few of my treasures. Emily, Linda, Benjamin, Peter, Marion, Mackenzie, 6 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and 2 boys. And they are good friends. Here are a couple of pictures of them with trees. This is like, sound of music swinging from the trees together, right? And then we can be more serious as well. We like to play instruments together, and so you can see here we've got the youngest one with the maracas. And this one's playing the fomalin. She actually has graduated now to the violin. Very good. Also, I'm an assistant principal at American Heritage School. It's located in American Fork, which is about 30 miles south of here. And it's a K-12 private school, meaning that it's tuition funded rather than tax funded. We have about 1,000 students on campus between daytime and after-school programs. And we have, beyond this, we actually have 8,000 students now in 50 states and about 50 countries. And my hope today is that by the end of this presentation, I'll be able to share with you some of the wonderful reasons that American Heritage School has been blessed to develop this wonderful program, and that you'll leave here with some practical tools, including a few that you should have found on your table today. One was a mission statement, which we'll look at momentarily. The second has the title of 7 Principles of Liberty. And the third is a how-to guide. And I'll just disclaim right now that I'm not trying to sell you my program. I'm just trying to share with you some practical lessons that we've learned as we've tried to listen to, learn from, and provide products, services, and communities for the homeschoolers that have contacted us. So, here's the overview. First of all, we'll look at some keys to American Heritage School success. We'll also look at some stories. I'll tell you the story of what our outreach efforts have been, and then we'll end with the call to action. So here's some highlights, first of all. If you'll look at the mission statement, please read the first line with me. It says this: American Heritage School exists for the purpose of serving parents. I'm going to pause right there. Isn't that wonderful? Because right from the very first phrases of American Heritage School's mission statement, American Heritage School is put in its place as a servant to parents. Right? It's a resource that Dr. Ray talked about. Of course, it goes on to say that we're going to assist in developing the hearts, the minds, and the minds, the hearts, and the bodies of students, in order that they may, 1, be useful in the hands of the Lord in building the kingdom of God on earth. Right? That's what your goal is, as you mentioned, Mike. 2, increase faith in and knowledge of the plan of salvation. 3, develop a love, understanding, and appreciation for America and the founding fathers. 4, develop the basic academic knowledge and skills necessary to be able to make self-education a lifelong pursuit. 5, learn to reason and discern between right and wrong, truth and error. You know, some schools, certain topics are politically correct, and they've made it so that it's just whatever you want, right? But there is truth in error. 6, learn to reason and discern between, develop character and self-discipline of mind and body. And 7, conduct themselves in all aspects of life as Christians. All activities, teaching, governance, and administration are to be accomplished in light of those 7 objectives, right? And insofar as possible, in harmony with revealed principles of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ and laws of the land. All teachers, staff, administrators, and trustees shall strive to be living examples of the values, principles, and skills taught in the school. That is one of the most important reasons why American Heritage School has been blessed to have, now for 45 years, continued growth through depressions and recessions, right? Not depression, we're not 1929, right? Hopefully we don't have any more depressions, but through recessions we have grown, right? We have continued to grow because of the environment that is created. And families around the globe have called us and said, when can I get some of your curriculum, right? Can you build a school in our neighborhood? And we've had to tell them, we'll do our best, right? And some of what we can do is share our strategies, share our curriculum. In fact, it was in the minds of the founders from the beginning that they would not just have a school, and so they named this American Heritage School and Family Education Center. It's a family education center component of this school that was to provide resources. The strategic vision statement of that center is that it will be an effective resource for parents worldwide in assisting children and families to magnify and maximize their divine potential. That's why we exist. That's why I'm employed, right, is to provide resources to families worldwide that can help them. And this is kind of like a tree. The trunk of the tree is American Heritage School, and we want to branch out and provide fruits to all the world, right? To have faith-based, academically rigorous education. Now, one of the keys, can you hear me okay now? Yeah, okay. Is that, think back to your educational experience if you went to college, right? You have the business school and the education school. And what makes those schools different? The medical school. And they're fish swimming in the same direction, and they also have the same vocabulary. It's what is said, the words that are studied, right, are very important to a school. You're not going to study the same words, the same phrases and tools in the engineering school as you are in the education schools and the business school. They're all different. And in the public schools, we've cut off from ourselves, by law in many cases, at least in the United States, much of the religious education that has the power to change hearts and minds. And some of those key words, God and Jesus Christ, and repentance and atonement, they're gone. You can't talk about them. Right? We saw that depicted in a movie on Tuesday night. Right? God is not Wednesday night. God is not dead. Well, turn now to this second handout. This says 7 Principles of Liberty, and it's two-sided. On one side, you'll see on one of the sides, you'll see 2 columns. On the other side, you'll see a simplified version. And I just want to share with you that this also is supremely powerful and important to American Heritage School, for us to be able to talk about the vocabulary and the language of faith. That vocabulary includes our 7 principles, and we have many other principles. There are hundreds, thousands of scriptural principles, but these are 7 that we think are important. One is identity and individuality. This is in my own words, and you can read this later. I'm not going to read it or recite it for you. It essentially is that every one of us is uniquely individual. Right? That God created you different from every other person on this planet. There's no other Leland Anderson in all the world. There might be someone who looks like me, right? There might be someone who talks like I do, who sounds like I do, and even has similar interests, but they aren't me, right? They have a unique and very different experience in this life. That is wonderful, right? It's wonderful because God loved me enough to give me this unique individual curriculum and this tutorial that I needed for my growth. He also loves us enough, in the second principle, to ask us to be self-governed. Because God wants for us what He has, as every good father does, He gives us commandments, right? Rules to follow. He expects us to follow them, right? And it's sometimes a little bit difficult, we think, but He wants us to follow them so that we can receive the blessings that He has. And if we will, then that requires a little discipline on our part, some self-government, right? We begin to know Jesus Christ. Let me just see if I can share a thought here, because I think this is really worth some attention, right? He expects us to govern ourselves and to obey those laws. Because He knew we would need help, and because He loves us so much, He sent His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to show us the way through His perfect example, and to suffer with us and bear our sins through unspeakable suffering in Gethsemane, which caused Him to bleed great drops of blood from every pore, suffer excruciating death on the cross, and rise triumphant from the tomb so that we might overcome sin and death through Him. When you know that Christ has overcome sin and death for you, you love Him. You want to become worthy of the mansions in His Father's house that He has prepared for you. And you begin to exercise Christian self-government. You don't need to be watched every hour by man because you know God loves you and is watching you and wants you to succeed. Those are key principles, right? The next principle, just one more, is Christian character. And as you begin to exercise Christian character, Christian self-government, you develop Christian character. You begin to love those who love you and those who do not. You begin to fill your life with the Holy Ghost, inviting Him to be your teacher. You begin to be diligent because Christ was diligent. And you love Him. You feast on the words of Christ. You pray more sincerely. As you do, you begin to be unselfish with your time and your money, giving your time and your love to those who ask, dedicating your life and your treasure entirely to Him. Right? These are principles that we teach our children, that they can give themselves. Right? There's no room for unchastity or infidelity. You don't like these kinds of behaviors when your life is filled with the Spirit of the Lord. And so, we teach these principles, and it's one of the reasons why our reputation has grown all throughout the world. We now have families who have called us and said, what can I get of your curriculum? So let's move on to the practical here. Principal approach is a method. that we use. A methodology is a set of methods, and we have methods at the school that you'll see reflected in some of the curriculum. One of them is called the 4R method. Research, reason, relate, and record. Many schools ask you to research, right? Read this. And they'll ask you to record. Prove this. Prove that you know, right? Explain or demonstrate in an essay or some performance. But the reasoning is a gospel, is to help understand the why, and especially to reason some gospel principle. Richard G. Scott said a principle is a concentrated truth packaged for widespread application. You should be able to reason those truths and then relate them to your own life, right? We'll look at some examples here in a moment. Essentially, some of you will know this quote, "The home is the basis of a righteous life, and no other instrumentality can take its place or fulfill its essential functions." American Heritage School recognizes that, and that is why we exist to serve parents. Now, here was our research process. After receiving all of those calls from parents and school leaders and co-op leaders, we decided to listen to parents. We said, why do you want to homeschool? Their number one reason was because they love their children. They love talking to them. They love having that interaction. Yes, they know all the reasons. They kind of get the sense that if my child's at home, one of the reasons they do so well academically is they actually get more airtime, right? They know that. If you're in a room with 20 people and we got a 30 or 40-minute class or a 50-minute class, you get 1 or 2 minutes. But if I got 20 minutes or 50 minutes with mom, I get tons of turns in conversation, lots of vocabulary, language dancing, back and forth, right? But they did it because they love their children, and they have this, they want to have them close to them. And they also wanted to imbue their religious values and then also strong academics. We asked them about their pain points, and they said that they have pain points such as these. It's really hard to prepare. I've got children under tow. They also said, some programs are complex. I ordered a box of curriculum. In fact, they sent me 4 boxes, 1 for each child. And I can't teach 4 science curriculums, 4 history curriculums. And they burn out after 1 to 2 years. Uncertainty, right? Am I enough? There is some of that. But when we decided, let's do what we can to meet their needs and address their pain points. And so we built a product. Lesson plans that each have an academic concept. That's the research portion. You'll see those here. Reasoning, a gospel principle. Some very simple preparation that's very readable. So easy, they can pick it up, and instead of having to come up with lesson plans, it's all on their fingertips. We're all, in products that we've produced. 5 to 10 minutes and they're ready to go. Maybe even they just pick it up one day and they're ready. Written in a first-person script that way. Resources such as flashcards, and ready-to-go movies and multimedia. So those were some of the products that we developed. You can see it here in a nice image. We came up with some teacher resources. We said this is going to address their pain point, right? Let's give them manuals, flashcards, timeline cards. Show you a picture of some timeline cards where mothers put up cards on their walls to see when was Nicholas Copernicus, when did he live, and where does he go on the timeline from ancient history and the creation to modern day and my place in God's plan? How about Johannes Kepler, right? Or in history, the Emperor Constantine, right? Where did he fit? We built a website. We said, let's put this in their pocket. These are a lot of good books. This is 1 year's worth of curriculum here. You can have all the lesson plans in print, and many like that, so they can take notes and annotate. But let's put it in their pocket on every device and make it multimedia rich so they can just tap. So that's what we did. Now, let me just bring up one of these as an example. How much time do I have?
A couple more minutes.
2 more minutes.
Yeah, 3 or 4 more.
Okay.
We'll have a Q&A.
Right. You go to the Family School online. This is the 3rd handout. You've got a how-to guide that talks about these different resources. You may not have any of that here, so and that's okay. Each of these lessons, I'll just describe one for you. In one lesson, lesson 18, year 1, it's a science lesson about bird beaks and feet. And the academic concept starts right at the beginning. It says that the birds and beaks of feet are designed to help them live successfully in their environments. And then there's this wonderful rich PowerPoint that comes up and is scripted so that the mother can just read it. It's a tool. She learns as she goes. And they see PowerPoints, pictures with beaks that are long and skinny for dipping nectar out of flowers, or that are flat and billed like a duck for digging in the mud, or that are hooked and curved like a bird of prey for tearing flesh, rabbits, squirrels, right? Or that are wading feet or perching feet. And they see all of this, and it's read to them, and they know, wow, that's amazing. God created all these feet, right? All these different bird beaks and bird feet. And even some of the names, the dactyly and the different arrangements of the toes. Then they reason a gospel principle. And this goes to the heart, right? The gospel principle is that God has also prepared us and given us expectations to live well and fulfill his work. And you read scriptures about how it says in the Bible, put away from thee a froward mouth and perverse lips put far from thee, right? Or how it says that Jesus came down and killed the leper. What did Jesus do with his hands? And so that becomes 2 points that they learn. One is the bird beaks and feet, those shapes. And now what am I supposed to do with my mouth? I'm supposed to speak kindly and live well, right? And bless people with my hands. And then they go ahead and they read out loud, for a little while. There's some books that we recommend. They also have a recording assignment where they exercise their writing skills, etc. Let's just go through a couple more quick slides. In this case, the parents become the living textbook. This is Booker T. Washington, great slave, freed from the Civil War here and grew up in post-Civil War Reconstruction period. He said of the schoolmaster where he went, what we hope that our children will say about us. He talks about this great impression that the man made on him. Samuel C. Armstrong was the general who came and established a school for the freed Negro slaves. And he said to him, many Southerners would do this, that the more he was with General Armstrong, the more he made an impression upon him of being almost a perfect man, a very Christ-like man. And he said, the older I grow, the more I realize there's no education which can be gotten from books or fancy apparatus that is equal to that which can be gotten from great contact with great men and women. Instead of studying books so constantly, how I wish we would study, our schools and colleges might learn to study men and things, right? We want to be the living textbook. You want that. Others want that. They want it, so do fathers. Christ is the living textbook, right? That man is greatest and most blessed and joyful, whose life most closely approaches the pattern of Christ. It has nothing to do with earthly wealth, power, or prestige. The only true test of greatness, blessedness, joyfulness is how close a life can come to being like the Master Jesus Christ. He is the right way, the full truth, and the abundant life. Right? Here's another quote from Neil A. Maxwell. He said, how wonderful it is, and we have all had these experiences, when we can gather in circles of friendship, large and small, and I would say in your homes with your children. Sharing is like gathering around conversational bonfires that grow warm and bright against the horizon. You will find the memories of these bonfires will achieve a lastingness, and not of what you wore or what the menu was, but rather because of the shared expressions of love and testimony. These are the times your children will remember. Especially helpful are the memories of those individuals and friends who are exemplars for you and me by the manner in which they strive so steadily and unapologetically to wear the whole armor of God. These special moments, one-on-one, in small groups, in corridors, hallways, or wherever, do something so subtle that we scarcely are aware that it is happening. Yet these help to further define our relationships with the Lord and with each other. It is often the one-liners that come from these special moments which have such a long shelf life and which help us long after the dispersal of these friends has occurred. In your families too, right? Conversational bonfires is what you want to create. Each of us from time to time is mentored and has chances to mentor our own children. In my experience, truthful and caring one-liners that occur within such nurturing relationships have a long shelf life. You can probably recount 3 or 4 examples of how people have said something, probably a sentence or a clause, and you remember it still. It touches you still. Such has been the case with me. Okay, well, remember, these are some memorizations. We encourage the families to memorize. We do word studies. I want to just leave you with one more tool here, and it's the reasoning of the principle. I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor one principle that you have learned at this conference. And I'd like you to start it with a when and end it with a then, or an if then. For example, when we talk with our children consistently, then we are likely to have conversational bonfires, right? That leave a lasting impression on their soul. That's a principle you can reason, right, from the research. When-then statements can be very powerful with your children. Will you turn to your neighbor just for 20 seconds and tell them a when-then and then a conclusion?
I'm from South. Pass it down for
Okay, here's the conclusion. I believe there are 3 things you can take at least from this, okay? So these are just some pictures of the tools, right, that we've created. We've asked parents to develop timelines in their home, and they use these notebooks, and the reasoning and the relating that they use for these wonderful lesson plans go in a treasure trove. Some of them are here on the table, you can see on the way out. My children use those all the time to teach each other. They pull them out because they've captured their revelation, their when-thens, their reasoning, their never-to-be-forgotten truths that they make a record of. Some of these, our conscience is a friend, warns us as a friend, before it punishes us as a judge, right? These kinds of little one-liners that we write down and capture, they change their hearts and develop them into men and women of character, Christian character, which is what you really want. My family, I'm one of 8 children. My parents now have all their children married and grandchildren. And that's, we all want a multi-generational happy family, whether we have 1 child or whether we have 10. We want that kind of posterity. That's how we'll influence the world. So, that's how we'll be happiest. Here's what you can do, I think. 3 things. Number 1, see yourself as a teacher, right? And a custodian of education. Teach your children principles, right? You can change yourself first. You are the custodians of their education. We've heard that before. Lots of options. Thank you, Dr. Ray. And number 2, support laws, policies, and mission statements that affirm and delineate the role of parents as educators and schools as assistants. Help parents see this as well. Right? There's a lot of power if your school district says, we exist to serve parents. If you want to come here for 3 hours a day to get the chemistry, calculus, and band class that you can't do very well at home, great, we'll support you. It's not an all or nothing deal. If you want to take an online class, we'll help you because we exist to serve you. Help support that mind shift in our public sphere as well. And then publish tools, right? We're trying to publish tools. We know that it can be difficult to homeschool, right? It can be possibly overwhelming. You want it, you want to teach. We're creating a whole plethora of tools, and there are other organizations that do it too, that will help you be successful, will help you prepare well, teach well, learn as you go, and do so in a way that aligns with your worldview. And by the way, I think there's a whole lot more overview and overlap amongst us than there are differences. See yourself as teachers, and this is the final quote. True principles, remember this. True principles understood change attitudes and behaviors. Study of the principles of the gospel will change behavior quicker than a study of behavior will change behavior. They'll transform the world 1 parent, 1 child, and 1 home at a time. They have a ripple effect that reaches beyond the moment for generations into the